Hello, I'm Svitek, and recently I had a chance to see Suzume, which is the latest effort from writer-director Shinkai. You may know him through his works of Your Name or Weathering with You, and even beyond that, he has a amazing catalog of movies that he's made, but those two in particular are the ones that he's known for. And so, I was really excited because I love those movies. I went to see this movie in the theaters. It was the English dub version, and I saw it with a group of friends and absolutely enjoyed it. And I did a mini review about that. But the purpose of this is to go into spoiler territory, to really deep dive it, because as much as I've kind of looked online, I haven't really seen people discuss it beyond just a non-spoiler review. Or maybe I'm just not looking, but I wanted to kind of go a little bit deeper with it. And even though it's not necessarily the best format, in this way. I do want to share the thoughts and questions that were going through my mind as I saw this. And hopefully you'll participate by commenting below in response to some of this, giving your theories about all of this. And so we can kind of get a discussion going. And ultimately, even if we disagree, that's okay. But I wanted to, just pose different ideas and so forth, and if we can be respectful, then I think we all benefit, right? And so just by the nature of that description, I think you understand that this is going to be spoiler-filled, and therefore I assume that you've seen the movie, right? Because we're going to go thick and fast with it. That's the spoiler warning. Now, immediately after, my group of friends, there was 4 of us, including myself, and we all really liked it, but there was a sentiment that there was some parts that perhaps we just didn't get because of cultural reasons. And, one of my friends is a huge anime fan, and, it was something that we noted of anime tends to do this thing where they don't overly explain. And it's one of the things I love about anime, right? Because it just, it's there, it's going to present it to you, and let you go on the journey with it and let you kind of do the work for yourself type of thing. And as far as this, we felt that there was aspects from the culture of Japan that we just weren't, we were just missing because we're not as well versed with Japanese culture. And it turns out we were right in that respect. The movie is in many ways a response to the March 11th, 2011 earthquake and tsunami, right? The Great East Japan earthquake, as it is sort of known, which was this scary thing, affected a lot of people. Likewise, it's on record for Shinkai to also talk about that the migration of people from rural places to urban cities and kind of what happens then where these places are heavily abandoned, is prevalent there. And that permeates. And once you know that, it makes sense, right? And the reason for that in particular is Japan, as I understand it, to the extent that I understand it, is dealing with a declining population. And because of that, everyone's just kind of migrating to urban environments and so forth, right? And it's something that Japan's been dealing with for quite a number of years. And so that is also sort of prevalent throughout the movie. So, that tracks. It really does. One thing, as I think about the movie, I was trying to look up let's call it the incantation that they say whenever they have to close these doorways, and unfortunately, I couldn't find what it was. And to me, as soon as kind of that came on screen, as they were saying it from the first go around, it really was this kind of sort of letting go and a respect for the past, right? That at any moment we, in the present, feel like, what's here is ours and so forth, and we forget that past, and we're not as humble to it. And so that kind of was a main takeaway from me as far as that. And so how it ties into the rest of it is, perhaps as the movie is presenting it, that these earthquakes and these natural disasters are coming because we're not as humble, towards nature, and we should be. We should have more reverence for Mother Earth, for our ancestors, and so forth. That's kind of what I took out of it in that respect. Now, one of the things when I talk about that, anime has this habit of just doing things and not really explaining, I thought the whole notion of like what these worms are and how this all really got started, like that wasn't quite evident. Even when we got to Tokyo and there's like, all the books, all the volumes of essentially the people who are meant to close doors, right? The history of this, it didn't reveal anything new. Like, we're just looking at these pictures, and the only thing that kind of really came out of it was that there's 2 keystones. But apart from that, we don't get the lore of what it's all about, and it felt like that would have been the place that it should have come. Or maybe with the grandfather, that would have been, where you fill in other gaps. But I guess the thing of it all, like, the ending to me could have just been a little bit more tightened up, simply because we have the keystone that is initiating all of this. And it's just doing it kind of for fun. We never really get a reason for it. And what would have been interesting to me is this notion that the keystone is doing it because it's needed. Like, by doing it, it does something, right? Like, it's this journey of, like, I don't know, creating something. Whereas really, it just came down to what it seemed like, that this keystone, used to be a person, and now the person just wanted their life back, and so they passed on being the keystone to somebody else in that respect. And by the end was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll be the keystone again, and we'll do what's needed. So it just felt like the bow wasn't completely tied together in that way. It just, it kind of was a little bit loose in that respect. And especially because of the relationship with the keystone and the grandfather, the former keystone, right? Daijing. Like, they knew each other, and I believe the grandfather even says, "Hello, old friend," something to that extent, right? So I wanted to know what that relationship was all about, and where it really felt like, whoa, we're almost like going a million miles an hour. And what's happening here is when the aunt gets possessed by the other keystone and starts saying, these negative thoughts that were within her to Suzume, and then retracts it, and how this other even keystone came to life is sort of a question mark. So that's really, for me, ultimately kind of the big questions of, and for the group as well, of like, whoa. What's the lore of these worms? Which we kind of slightly, like, we can understand based on the hints, but then more so as far as the keystones and so forth, like, yeah, if anything, like, it almost, in that sense, like, where I read in between the lines, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy X, there's this notion of sin, right? Sin is like, within Final Fantasy X, sin is like this main thing that essentially resets the balance of Earth, let's say, every so years. And so what these humans do within Final Fantasy X is they go on this pilgrimage to defeat sin, so that way they can have peace for a number of years, and then sin will return, and so forth. And through this pilgrimage, there's always a sacrifice of the summoner that has to be made, right? And so that's what this felt like whoever, like, it's just passing of the torch always of who is the next keystone. But we didn't really dive into that. So, like, you know, whether I'm right about that, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I guess we won't see. I mean, you know, the movie's the movie. But I would love to see it again. You know, I've only seen it the one time, but now with knowing the plot, I would love to kind of revisit it and see it through that lens to see what more I can gather from it. You know, we'll see. But that's kind of how I interpreted it, except ultimately, you know, Daijing makes the sacrifice again to remain the keystone and so forth, right? Now, as far as even with the keystones being in place, how these doorways are being opened and so forth, like that was another question, right? So overall, the movie was very focused on the emotional weight this had on Suzume and, you know, those around her. And it just, you know, to me, the fascinating part was, okay, what is happening with this, right? You know, of the whole world saving thing. And, you know, a theme that was brought up of, I forget exactly how it was said, but this notion that, you know, doing good work isn't necessarily meant to be displayed, you know, you're just doing it because you should do it. Something along those lines, right? It happens fairly early on in the movie, you know, because especially, like, it's when Suzume is questioning, why have I never heard of closers? And that's sort of the answer that's given is, you know, there. So yeah, the world that this presents is wildly, wildly fascinating, and it's not a frustration, but I would have loved to dive deeper into that and have that really be explained, right? And I understand it in the sense that by the end, it really is kind of this healing of Suzume's inner child, right? Quite literally. You know, we open up the movie with that memory of her as a child. And she thinks it's her mother, but in reality, it's her in the ever after counseling herself. So, you know, that's beautiful. Now, if anything, I would have loved for it to expand in its scope, right? So when I talk about the former Keystone Daijing, setting this whole thing up, like opening the doorways purposefully, you know, we know that it healed Suzume through this entire process. And so that in itself was a noble thing. But she represents a larger aspect, right? So going back to the earthquake and the tsunami, right? It's very symbolic of, you know, what actually took place. And there was a lot of people that were orphaned due to this. And so in one way, it's great that Suzume had this cathartic experience, but it would have been, to me, stronger had it expanded out to more people. And we kind of get a little bit, like every time they're able to save and prevent the earthquake, the worm itself essentially turns into what seems like this healing rain. So it's hinted at, but not quite fully there. And that's the interesting part, because they can't see the worm itself, but once the worm changes into the rain, people are able to see it. And certainly how Suzume even was able to get into the ever after is a big question mark. We understand why she's able to go back, you know, because it's the same door that she entered as a child, and that's how she's able to see this, just like the closers. And yet the closers have never been to the ever after, because the ever after is not for the living. So how did Suzume do this? Now, my guess is because of her strong will to find her mother, right? Through the loss, like that pain alone just allowed her somehow to do the unimaginable. But it would have just been nice to really hit the nail on the coffin, so to speak, with that of like, okay, well, how did she do this, right? So these are the questions that are permeating through my mind. These are kind of ways that I'm trying to explain them for myself. But I would love to dig deeper with all of you guys to do so. And in fact, like this whole movie is working such a number on me and intrigues me so much in the best of ways that, like with his other movies, they've been converted into novelizations. And so I bought the novelization now. It won't come out until July, at least the English version. So, here I am at the time of the recording in April. So it'll be quite a number of weeks before I get into that. And I don't anticipate I'll get many more answers. But what I like about the book, what I like about the ability of books is for it to get more internal. And oddly enough, one of my favorite novelizations is Hocus Pocus, based on the Disney movie starring, Sarah Jessica Parker and all those wonderful actors. I thought the novelization really did a good job of kind of, in succinct areas, just adding a little bit that helps expand the movie. And so I'm hoping that the book in that way helps fill in the gaps for me just a little bit better, right? That would be great. Now, as I said, in that respect, they've done novelizations for Your Name. I haven't read that one. I did buy it, so that's coming. But I haven't read, so I don't know, how similar or dissimilar it may be. So we'll see about that. But that's how intrigued I am and willing to, go deeper down the rabbit hole, so to speak, to get these answers. I want to explore this world more. Now, just something to note, the literal translation of the title is Suzume's Locking Up. So in the US, just in theaters, it's just straight up called Suzume. But the literal translation of the title, as intended, is Suzume's Locking Up. So, for whatever insight that may hold for you as far as the movie itself. So yeah, these are kind of the thoughts swirling my head that I wanted to share. As I said, nothing ultimately definitive, but I wanted to share them, and jumpstart the conversation. So please, if you're still with me, comment down below so we can just share ideas and ultimately, hopefully, share our love and passion for this movie. Because that's what I have, and that's what my friends had. And I've been talking with them about it. So that's what's so great about art in general, is you can have those deep discussions. That's what I want. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. I truly do appreciate it. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next time.